Good morning, everyone. We want to welcome you to our webinar today. We are excited to have Gary Harpenow and Kevin Clifford from Innovia Consulting. And they are both customer engagement specialists here, and they'll be presenting on enhance your organizational culture with continuous process improvement. And before I get started, I just want to remind you that we are recording this webinar as well as all of our webinars, and it will be posted to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to type them into the questions box, and we will get them answered during our Q&A time at the end of our session. So now I'm going to pass it on over to Kevin to kick off our presentation.
Hey, Angie, thank you. Appreciate all the hard work you put in on these webinars. As Angie said, my name is Kevin Clifford. I'm part of the customer engagement team here at Innovia. And there's my contact information. We'll share that again later in the presentation. If there is, you have questions after the presentation, feel free to reach out to me, or if you're watching the recording, this is a way you can get in touch with me, and I'd be happy to talk to you some more about the presentation. So with that said, what we're going to talk about today is continuous process improvement. And I'm going to preface this by letting you know that my background prior to coming to Innovia, which I've been here almost 3 years now, was strictly manufacturing, mainly centered around iron and steel. So if it seems like I keep defaulting to a manufacturing reference in the example, that's my safe zone. But as we'll talk about later, this can be applied to any business in any business process. So, the question whenever you implement any kind of a program like this is, when is it the right time to drive improvement? The quick answer for this is, there is no right time. If you're waiting, for this to get accomplished, that day will never come. You need to step off the end of that pier so you can start to reap some of the benefits that you're going to see with a continuous improvement. And this is more about culture and processes than what it is about, statistics. Yeah, we're going to measure metrics, but what drives those metrics, what gets you to success, is a change in your culture. So how do we go about building a culture of continuous improvement? Next slide, Gary. If any of you have sat in the presentations that Bob and Alan and now Gary are doing on value stream mapping, this is not value stream mapping. This is continuous process improvement. They kind of overlap one another, but they're clearly differentiated. With value stream mapping, you want to look at this when, you've had the same process for years, maybe decades, and you need to re-examine it. Maybe your process is just not working, and you've come to the realization that the process itself is creating too many defects, too many failures. If you put in major technology, or if you have significant turnover in manpower, those are good times to look at value stream mapping. Same with, and I've seen this in manufacturing where, one shift does it this way, or this team on this shift does it that way. And there's so much variability that you don't have a real control over your system. High employee frustration and a complete lack of documentation of the processes. Those are all good triggers for value stream mapping. But what we're talking about today is continuous process improvement. And the objective here is to drive that employee engagement. And I need to, keep pounding that point. This is where the improvement in your processes come from, is your employees. It helps to improve efficiency. You're going to reduce waste, improve quality and safety. And don't skip over safety. Here again, I'm going to go back to my manufacturing days, but an improvement in safety, reduces downtime, reduces retraining of a new employee, all the things that take away from you being efficient and profitable. It'll reduce your cost of goods, and it also creates this company alignment and teamwork. And probably just as important, you'll now have performance visibility. You'll be able to see what it is your people are doing and whether or not they're actually affecting positive change in the organization. Next one. And again, I apologize, my background is manufacturing. This isn't just, it's not strictly for manufacturing. And we look at, all kinds of business areas, whether it be supply chain or IT, even in finance, there are processes. And what you want to do is look at this from a high level and go, what are my processes? Now, how do I go about improving those? But, sales, maintenance, even janitorial, the day-to-day cleaning of the workspace of the areas, where do I put my equipment so it's most efficient? And obviously warehouse, shipping and receiving. Type of businesses that it works in, again, I have a daughter that is in the medical field, works at a hospital lab. They do continuous process improvement, law firms, banking, distribution centers. You don't really think of a bank as having processes, but they do. There's a flow of paperwork, there's an approval process. All of this needs to be looked at, and how do you make yourself more efficient? And again, improvement is a culture. You've just got to get your people with the right mindset and the right belief that they control this. And we'll talk about how you go about doing that. We're all familiar with this management chain of command, as you would. You start at the top, you've got your C-suite or your general management, and they form a plan for moving the company forward, how they want to proceed forward. They push those ideas out to the department heads, on down to the supervisors, and eventually out to the frontline employee, whether that be on a manufacturing floor or in an office. And this is where we get to talking about flipping your organization upside down. For continuous process improvement to work and work efficiently, you're going to have the frontline employee as the motivator and the driver. Everybody has the same agreement as to what improvement are we looking for. But your first line employees are the ones that understand the job the best, have the most control in the day-to-day performing of their job, knows where they're getting tripped up. So they're going to bring the ideas together on a team. These get pushed to the supervisor, department head, and then up to the C-suite. So everybody has to buy in, but you have to recognize that your people on the front line know how to do their job the best. And whenever you engage with these people, this is where you build this trust and you get this flow of information going. I keep going back to my college days, and there was a study that was done that stuck with me from then. And I took it over into manufacturing. Back in the 1920s, Westinghouse had a facility, it was called the Hawthorne facility. And from there, they learned what they call the Hawthorne effect. And very simply what it was they were trying to determine what's the best place to put lights, how much light, what wattage, et cetera, to improve their efficiency, to improve their workflows, to improve their overall quality. And as they studied the metrics for this, nothing was aligning until they started looking at the fact that the employee on the front line, they got to put input in on where those lights were put and how they wanted those positioned. That was the act that created the benefit that they saw. So keep in mind, those are the people that are going to bring you the best information on how you can improve your process. Next slide.
Thanks, Kevin. So as Kevin said earlier, my name is Gary Harpinaugh. I'm a customer engagement specialist, as he is. My background as well as is manufacturing. I spent 29 years in the pharmaceutical industry and had the opportunity as a general manager of a large site of about 500 plus people to actually implement continuous process improvement. So I went through every department of the site implementing this process and saw huge gains in efficiency, and was able to accomplish that over about a 6-month to a year period, where we actually had people embracing it and moving, some quicker than others. So I'm not going to paint the rosy picture that it's easy, but my background has shown that it does work, and that's why we wanted to kind of share it with you guys. As Kevin said, it is a culture, changing culture. Anytime you're building a culture and changing a culture, it takes time for people to get on board. It's all about building trust with your people. And out of the gate, normally your leadership team probably doesn't have full trust of everybody on the floor. So as we'll talk about organizational structures, it's about building that trust and building that support system throughout your organization over time to get everyone on board. Anytime you talk about improvement, there's a industry standard out there that talks about the 7 areas of waste. And as you look around this pie chart, you'll see 7 different areas that we'll talk about. You know, when you start with defects, it's easy in manufacturing to quantify defects because it's anything that is not made to spec, anything that's not right, that's discarded or has to be reworked is considered a defect. But this applies in many office environments, from doctors to banks to hospitals. It's documentation that has to be rerouted, redone. It's procedures that were not properly done, has to be rerouted and refinished. So defects can apply across. It's all about waste of time, okay, and not delivering on time. Transportation, again, as you think about manufacturing or you're making product distribution, transportation can have a big waste, either in setting up the transportation to making the transportation happen. But this also applies in office environments as well. Transportation can be getting documents from one person to the next. It can be delivering different supplies to an area and being on time. So there's different applications, but what I'm trying to emphasize here is it is broader than just manufacturing. Inventory, you can talk about supplies, you can talk about finished goods, you can talk about inventory that has to be redone. So motion, again, this is pretty clear when it comes to manufacturing. I had an opportunity to tour a motor assembly line for Cummins engines, and it was very apparent that they had taken this to a very high, or I should say a very low level, right? The people on the assembly line actually had stations where they would apply certain parts to the motor as it came down the assembly line. The fact that these people could have to reach up high to get a component that was that goes in every engine, what they did is they moved that bin closer to the actual gun that they assembled it with and made their motion a lot quicker. Now we're only talking 2 to 3 seconds, but as you start looking across parts for an engine, you could see that the time adds up. And they were at that level. They didn't start at that level, but that's where the level they were at when I toured the program. Motion can be people, a printer in an office area. If a person's printing and they got to get up every time to go get something from the printer versus having a local printer, it can be as simple as that to reduce the amount of time it takes to perform a task. Waiting, obviously that's without saying. People waiting on other people's approvals, waiting for supplies to show up, can't get my job done, big waste of time. Overproduction. Now this one is primarily in manufacturing. It's where you're basically producing too much and you got too much inventory going out. You're not making the right parts at the right time. But it could be as well as in an office area, if you're spending too much time on a task and building too far ahead, you could be wasting time at that point. Over processing. This one here hits a lot of different areas. In the manufacturing world, it could be basically anywhere from mixing to blending to chopping. And if you're going overboard and doing it longer than it takes, you can reduce the amount of processing time. But one thing that I want to emphasize is that a lot of times in the approval process, over processing too many approvals takes too much time. So looking at the approval process and figuring out what is the right amount of approvals for your business can reduce that approval time and the amount of work and the amount of paper passed around, or the amount of emails that go out can be accomplished by looking at and asking people what do they think. Okay, so those are the 7 areas of waste, and the intent of these 7 areas is to get people to think deeper about their job, their task. So when you go onto the floor and you ask a person, what can we do better to make your job easier, more efficient? By asking and targeting these different areas about how much time are you waiting on parts to get here? You know, is it, you know, that wrench that you're using over here, do you have to go get it, or do you have it right at your workstation? Those type of things can help you ask the right questions to get people to think deeper around how they can make their job more efficient. Another area I wanted to touch on is organizational levels. So, you know, too many times we talk about organizational levels and it's confusing, but this is going to be very important as we talk further about the continuous process improvement. As you look at organizational levels, I've shown some examples here in different industries and just kind of lined them up to make it clear on how we talk about organizational levels. You guys may have different titles for these areas, but as I look through manufacturing, there's going to be a lead team. If a small company, it may be a C-suite where it's the CIO, the CFO, the CEO. That could be your lead team. Areas, you know, it could be warehousing, manufacturing, packaging. A department, examples of a department would be shipping, receiving, mixing, molding, those type of things. And then your shop floor is always the lowest level where the actual work's getting done. So that's where you start, and that's where your ideas come from. So if I bounce over to an accounting firm, you've got to have a leadership team of some sort, whether it's partners, whether it's a C-suite, whether it's a group of directors. The areas could be broken into international, domestic, auditing, consulting. Departments could be down to the tax, costing, forecasting, general ledger. And then your shop floor is the actual accountants, the CPAs, the analysts that are actually doing the day-to-day operations. And that can blend over to retail. You know, you've got, you know, sporting goods, men's, women's clothing, camping, hiking. You've got all kinds of different departments, and then your shop floor is actual retail clerks and the stockers is where you go. So as we look across different businesses, organizational levels, you can start seeing how they apply as we move forward. So the other area that I will hit on is metrics. And just so we all get grounded on metrics, you know, what is a metric? A metric is a means of measuring performance against a goal, target, or competitor. Goals should be realistic, obtainable, but not easily reached. Okay. The goal here is that this sets people to align all their initiative towards one area. Okay. So why is it important? It enables you to know where you are at a given time. So if you're measuring, you know where you're at in regards to the competition, regards to the target. And really, as you think back to your earlier childhood days when you're playing sports, whether it's baseball, soccer, or whatever it might be, you know, they always said, if you're not keeping score, you're not playing to win. And that's very true in business. You've got to keep score to know if you're winning or not. And if you're not keeping score, you never know where you're at against your competition. Some examples of, I threw out a few here. Manufacturing, if you look at your throughput, how well you're producing according to your forecast. You keep the straight line, and that's your forecast. Your orange line is what you're actually making. And you always know from month to month, week to week, where you're at in regards to that goal. Another one might be reduce rejections. And sometimes you don't set it to 0. You have to be realistic. So we're going to reduce it by 10%. So you got your starting point, you got your target of 10%, and you keep measuring, okay? And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but as you see a shift in your accomplishments where you've reduced it from 20 down to 15, that's a significant jump. Don't forget to celebrate. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. If you look at like a tech business, you look at sales, you look at new accounts. The thing about the new accounts ones, you can have a 2-dimensional type of metric where you're measuring month to month. You've got month to month goals because you have seasonal effects, and your target for each month might be different. But then you also keep the running total against your annual target. If you look at warehouse distribution, you could have average days of stock, percent on time shipments. Those are 2 very common types of metrics that people keep. And the key here is what's important to your group at the given time so that everyone can align to what do I want to work on. Okay. So let's take a look at the actual continuous improvement process. So we're going to start at the shift level. This is the shop floor level. Okay. So imagine yourself with, 2 or 3, 5 or 6, 10 different people that are coming in on a shift. And when I say a shift, you could have 1 shift a day, you could have 3 shifts a day, you could have 2 shifts a day. But whatever that is, you get your shift together, okay? And you look at what is going to be our goal. What's important to our operations? Set the target, okay? Then you agree on, okay, how often are we going to meet and how long are we going to meet? For a shift level type of operation, we never met more than 10 to 15 minutes daily. It was a stand-up meeting. It was right after our safety talk. We basically went in and we took a look at where we were at against our goals and where do we want to go. Once you've set your goals, you basically start out by reviewing where are you at today, all right, with that metric. You ask for ideas on how, we can improve our process to meet our goal. Once you've got those ideas written down, you assign them to someone in the group. This is very important. Someone in that group must own it. Whether they're going to accomplish it on their own or not, they have to own it. That way you've got a level of accountability to come to every day to say, here's what you said you were going to get done from the last meeting. Did you get it done? And where are we at with meeting the goal? And this is a feedback loop. So this is a continuous process within that shift that they will constantly review that, hold people accountable. And again, this is not about making people feel bad. Okay, you didn't get something done. The question is, what kind of help do you need to get it done? What kept you from getting it done? How can I help you? It's showing support. That's a critical act that you have to have in this process so that people aren't afraid to sign up for something. Okay, but once you have achieved or you made a significant step in the milestone, celebrate. This is one thing that people forget so many times, is they get caught up in wanting to do better and go, that we forget to stop and celebrate. So if you make a step towards a goal, a significant step, celebrate. It could be as simple as having pizza at break time, having pizza for lunch. Once you meet your goal, it could be even bigger. It could be, let's go to dinner, let's buy jackets, let's do something bigger. But celebrate in some fashion. And this goes back to how you guys celebrate is really around how your organizational culture is set up. So this is the whole process for continuous improvement. The key is this is repeated all the way up the chain, okay, or down the chain if you turned upside down. Okay, so as you look across the organization, everyone's going to follow the same process. This is important that everyone participates. It can't just be on the shop floor. Okay, the key here is if you look at the meetings, they vary in different frequency and how much time you spend on it, depending on what level you're at. Whatever is appropriate for that area or that department or that lead team, you set that up so that you can stay on top and in touch with the rest of the organization. The other key factor here is you must show support. That lead team needs to be out on the floor daily, showing support, attending other meetings, asking what they can do to help. As a general manager of a site, I was out on the floor every day, okay, for an hour. During that hour, I would attend different meetings in different areas. But my goal was over a 2-week period, it was a very large site. Over a 2-week period, I would be hitting every area, every meeting, and I would be in there asking questions. What can I do to help you get to your goal? Okay, that needs to happen at a department supporting an area supporting a shift. Okay, this is critical in order to build that culture that Kevin talked about earlier. The other key thing here is align your metrics. Okay, all these metrics should be aligned up the chain to the site and where the site wants to go. Okay, we shouldn't be working on something at the bottom that is immaterial to what's happening at the top, and vice versa. Okay, so make sure your metrics are aligned. The other key thing is, as you come up with ideas, if you've attended the process mapping sessions, Bob and Alan have basically split their actions into 3 different components. This is identical to what that is. Okay, depending on the size of your actions, there are 3 categories: do-its, events, and projects. Okay, how do you determine where they fit is based on the resources and the timeline requirements. So as you look at do-its, shift resources are only required, and it will take days to complete. So it's something very simple, very unique to their operation. It's not outside their shift. They can basically make it happen. Move a bin for easier access. Change an inspection route so it's more efficient. Change break schedules on their shift so that it's more efficient for the people. As you move to events, there are multiple departments involved, so it's getting bigger. Okay, funds are within the department, does not require site funds, and it takes weeks to complete. Examples of this would be like a QC form change, shift schedule change, facility safety rules. So it's inside that department or departments, but it hasn't gone outside their function. Okay. If you look at projects, site resources and capital is required. It is a multiple month, maybe even years type of a project. It's a new facility. It's an expansion, a site procedure that impacts the entire organization, transportation flow on the site. So those are types of projects that require. So the key thing here is that somebody on that team has to still own it, even if it's a project. Their job is to stay in touch with the project manager and make sure they can report back to the team where we're at on this project. Okay, so the size of it just determines that it's going to take longer, but you've got multiple actions going at one time. This process, hence continuous process improvement, is a cyclical process. It's continuous. You set the goal, you measure, you make improvements, you measure again, you decide if you've met it or not. If you haven't, you continue on, okay? If you have met it, you celebrate, okay? Don't forget to celebrate. It's very important. So just a refresher, setting that goal to where it's realistic and obtainable, but not easy, too easy. You know, measure and keep measuring and celebrate in a continuous cycle. So what happens when you finally reach your goal? Do you stop? No. The next thing to think about is, okay, can we make more progress? Should we lower the or set the target even more aggressive? If the answer is no, then what other area can I improve on? And let's set a new area and a new target and a new goal. So the key here is don't ever give up. Continuous process improvement is when you're never satisfied with the way it is today. There are always areas for improvement. It can be in safety, it can be in quality, it can be in throughput. So don't think that you're done once you've met the goal and we say, hurrah, we celebrate, now we're done. Nope. What's next? Let's keep it going. So that's important. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin to kind of talk about how do you implement this at your site or your company.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, whenever we're talking about continuous process improvement, you know, you've got to realize that this is an investment. And with that investment, you need somebody to manage this. And, you know, who is the best person? And is it one single person that is full-time position? That'll depend on your facility. You know, I've had facilities where we had several people, but coming out of the gate, typically I would start with one person, put them in charge of it. They interact with all the different teams and all the different levels. You know, your organization may be small enough that, you know, one of your employees will take this on as part-time, but you need that one person that kind of shepherds or oversees the whole continuous process improvement. And that person should report directly to the leadership team. You know, the leadership team needs to be fully invested, as Gary spoke to. And I had the same practice. Whenever I was running a manufacturing facility, overseeing a manufacturing facility every day, I made it a point to be out there. But I still need that person that was in charge of this process to come back to me and give me a deeper insight as to what was happening. And whenever you're looking at that individual, you know, obviously it pays to have somebody with a high level of computer skills. So they're going to be measuring metrics. They're going to be keeping track of data. They're going to be benchmarking this stuff. And yeah, it can be done on pencil and paper, but if you have an individual with a high level of computer skills, you know, it makes it that much more meaningful and that much more accurate. And keep in mind, as you start to see your return on your investment, this will grow, and your investment will need to grow with it. So that this is not only a continuous cycle of improvement, but also a continuous cycle of growth.
Yeah, Kevin. So you know, I said I had a site as general manager of a site of 500 plus people. We started out with one individual dedicated, and we grew it to 4 totally dedicated by the time we had everybody, including QC, finance, supply chain, warehousing. Everybody in the site was fully engaged. We had 4 full-time people, easily paid for by the amount of efficiency that we were gaining.
Yeah, and whenever I put together teams like that and they started to expand, I still wanted that point person.
Yep.
You know, and I try to tailor it so that the point person was the one that reported to the leadership team. That's not saying the other individuals couldn't, but you wanted kind of one source of truth reporting back to the leadership team. So
yeah, great point. And that's exactly what we did. That was, yep, that's important.
Yeah. So you got all this data, and you know, it's important that your teams can see this on a daily basis, a weekly basis, depending on what you're measuring. But equally important is that you put it in terms and present it in a fashion that they understand. And you can do this with flip charts or whiteboard. I mean, God bless you if you want to use, a Power BI report on a live screen that is reporting daily, which I've seen in some facilities. But that, don't get your head all wrapped around that. Get a whiteboard. I think one of my favorite stories was, I'm a little older than some people in this call, and back in the 80s, there was this big quality push. Automotive was pushing it, every field that you're in, we're having a quality program push. And I got invited to one facility to look at how they were implementing this and how it was working for them. And this was an automotive supplier. And I'm walking through, and at every workstation, there was 6 or 7 plotted graphs, showing different metrics. And I kind of held back from the group a little bit and went over, pulled one of the graphs down, walked over to one of the frontline workers and, showed it to him. I said, "Can you explain to me what I'm looking at?" He goes, "Well, I'm not sure what it means, but they come out and change it every day." So you've got to keep this, meaningful so that your people can look at it and see whether they're winning or losing, see the progress that they're making. And, keep the ideas that you've captured in these meetings. And when you have these meetings, everybody here has been in, these kind of organizations where you've got the idea man throwing out a million ideas and you got the guy over there that's not participating as all. As this goes on and they see that leadership, has bought in, those quiet members tend to step forward more and tamp down some of the noise from the other people. So, and you want the information that you're sharing, meaningful. This is a great slide here. The ideas captured at the meeting. You come to an agreement on what ideas you're going to tackle that you think would be beneficial, that would give you an improvement in your process. And Gary spoke to this earlier. You then give an owner. They're not the person that has to make it happen, but they're the person that has to see whether it is happening. And then you put a date on it. You put a task up, you assign a person to it, but you don't have a date for completion. I guarantee you it won't get done. So, and tracking your performance goals, again, just put it in a fashion to where they can see this in a real-time, realistic, are we winning? Are we losing? And that tends to encourage people to bring more ideas as they see, okay, well, that idea did improve my process. We did reduce our scrap rate. We did, cut down our lead time, whatever that would be. So I know we've thrown a lot of information at you real quick here. We do have a time constraint, but at this one time, Angie, are there any questions?
Thanks, Kevin and Gary. No questions have come through at this time, but please feel free to get those questions in the questions box so we can get them answered for you.
And we will put up our information, our contact information here again. There's my cell, there's my office number, there's my email. If you want to have a deeper conversation with Gary and I, reach out to either one. We'd be more than happy to get on a call with you or set up a meeting or come on site, whatever's necessary, and kind of give you a higher, deeper dive on this thing. And then also help get you started in the right direction.
Yeah, I echo that, Kevin, for myself as well. If you need our help, reach out to us. It is a simple process, but it takes an effort. The most difficult part about this whole thing is getting that cultural change. And so, that's the piece that's kind of tricky, is how do you get that?
All right, guys. Well, no questions have come through, so I think you did a great job. Thank you both for presenting today.
Our pleasure.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining today, or if you're watching on demand, we thank you for taking some time out to watch this. And I just want to let you know that we are doing a new training workshop, and we have a variety of training workshops to choose from. So visit our workshop page, and that's inovia.com/workshops for more information and to register for the training workshop that fits for you. And we will have more webinars coming up, so check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's inovia.com/events. And we have a podcast that is going on. If you have not heard of it already, it's called the Inovia Conversation. And we just want to encourage you to listen to the selection that our hosts, Steve Waltz and Jeff Pergolski, have provided to us. You can find out about all the different podcast platforms to listen to on our podcast page, and that's inovia.com/podcast. So check out that selection and subscribe so you'll be notified when those new episodes air. All right, everyone, we thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon on another Inovia webinar. Have a great day, take care, and we hope that you have a very nice, healthy, and safe holiday season.